Hello, everyone. We're going to get started in just a minute. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm so excited to be with you, and we have such an amazing crew of folks on with us today, and we're going to dive into what your burning questions are about politics, the election, the convention, anything under the sun, and of course, maybe we'll talk a little bit about Hollywood and what folks are thinking about there. So I want to take this opportunity to just introduce the panelists. We have household names, Tamlin Tamita, of course, from The Good Doctor and Joy Luck Club, Joel De La Fuente from The Man in the High Castle, Pia Sinha Roy, who is a freelance journalist now, but of course was with The Hollywood Reporter and Entertainment Weekly. We're so lucky to have you all, and why don't we just dive in and have a fun discussion. How was Michelle Obama last night? I mean, was she good or what?
Wow, amazing! I mean, that was a speech. That was not. She. I mean, that she was able to sustain a speech for about 20 minutes, to be to have the connection to the camera the whole time, to be very specific and clear with her thoughts. I was very impressed with her ability to connect in such an unusual circumstance.
Yeah, so inspiring. Tamlin, Pia, what were your thoughts?
I was blown away by just how, I think anytime Michelle Obama speaks, though, you pay attention. So she knows that, and she chose her words so carefully. You know that, I mean, she's someone who has avoided using the president's name for a long time. So you know when she's using it, she means business here. And she did not mince her words, but she was also, she was so decent and so clear with her message. And I think that really connects. It felt like America's mum coming on board to tell us how we need to pay attention and stand up for our nation right now.
Because America's mom has been missing for the last 3.5 years or so, correct?
Mm-hmm. Well, the current America's mom was busily taking notes all night. So that's what I can say. But I'd like to echo Pia's and Joel's words. Is that when you have someone who speaks so intelligently, so eloquently, so articulately, and most important, most empathetically, which was the key word, which has always been the key word with our former First Lady, is that she is able to connect on so many levels: heart, mind, brain, and the soul. And that the connectivity of her tools that she has in her hands and has had in her hands for all the 8 years that we knew her as our First Lady was testament, and we can all witness, we witnessed a wonderful, timeless speech that can be used for every campaign. It's just to really remind us all that we are really united. This is the time to gather together. This is the time to vote, because it is what it is. We have to do the work that needs to be done, and we need to do it together. So thank you, former First Lady Michelle Obama. I almost said president.
I know a lot of people were hoping, right?
Right? Right? Yes.
Not too late to maybe set a draft petition out there.
I mean, anything can happen.
Right.
I hope the Biden-Harris ticket will utilize her, and I think they are. But once they get into office, because that would just be such a shame not to have her inspirational voice out there along with Barack. I mean, just such an amazing power couple. And I guess let's maybe chat a little bit about the first Asian American on a presidential ticket. I was thinking maybe when I'm 80, I would have seen that, but what are your thoughts? I mean, this is such an amazing time.
It really is. I genuinely didn't think that was ever something we would be at this point. So I am so excited. And I have to say, last week after she was announced, it was so great to see so many stories come up about her Indian American background. And, I think it's so important that she is both Black and Indian American. And I think that's so, those two things are coming together beautifully here, and they're speaking to a really big group of people who are very united behind her.
That's right.
I think it, sorry.
I'm sorry, go ahead, Joel.
I think it's remarkable and draws a sharp contrast with the Republican Party that, in just one person, Kamala Harris represents, a woman, an Asian American, an African American. Just single-handedly, she embodies so much of the diversity of our country, which is so glaringly absent in the current administration. And it's just exciting to see. It's exciting because it's a priority for Joe Biden to have someone like her at his side. He's been really clear and communicative about how he wants her to have such an important part in his administration. And so it just sends an people who haven't been represented for years are suddenly being seen again.
Yeah.
I think I'd like to say something, and we're having a bit of trouble with some crackles, so I'm just practicing turning my mic off. But I think what's been really fantastic is this swell of enthusiasm, of questioning, of curiosity, with Kamala being our VP candidate on the Biden-Harris ticket. And it's just people getting to know her, getting to be reacquainted with her, getting to chastise her, critique her, uplift her, and support her. And the conversations that are going on right now is that she's the hottest thing that's in discussions all across this nation. And I love the fact that she represents the diversity. She's a woman. She's of Jamaican heritage, of South Asian heritage, Indian heritage, and she's a lawyer. She's from Cali girl. She's from California. The West Coast is the best coast. But all the conversations that are taking place in all of those tribes are important, because we all get to come from a different angle, from a different perspective, in getting to know this vice presidential candidate. And at the end of the day, she's just the best candidate out there. We cannot wait for October 8th, where she gets to go on that platform and gets to debate the current VP, because she's going to sweep the floor with it. That's what I'm feeling excited about, is the swell of conversations that are going on in specific groups, the women's groups, the Black groups, the African American groups, the South Asian groups, the Southeast Asian groups, all the Asian American groups. We're all having them together, the lawyer groups, the California groups. We're all having these discussions together. But at the end of the day, we all collide in this wonderful kind of paramount of decision that she's the best candidate. Amy Klobuchar said should have a woman there. It should be a Black woman. She ticked that box. AAPI groups all across the nation said we should have an AAPI person up there as well. So it was Tammy Duckworth and Kamala Harris and all the other great vice president candidates that were running for president. But this is the kind of decision that is made collectively. Yeah. And the amazing part is that Kamala rose to the top, and we're going to all bind together arm in arm to support her.
Pia, did you have any thoughts?
Well, I agree completely. I think it's one of those things. I also think it's important to remember, Kamala has been doing this work in California. She is, she's our senator. She knows what she's doing. And, at the core of this, we need someone who knows what they're doing more than anything. If the last 3.5 years have shown us anything, we have to know that the person we're electing just knows the job. So I love that, she checks that box first and foremost, and then everything else that comes with it is just really great for representation. And I think representation is so important, you know, especially as someone who has been covering Hollywood for the past decade. We have been talking about the importance of seeing ourselves reflected back. Why is it so important? And, you know, we don't necessarily get to see that so much on the politics stage. The few people we see, we are hugely united behind. But now we're getting somebody, you know, who's going to break new ground, and she knows how to do the job. And that's so exciting.
Very much so. You know, and if you look back at the last 3.5+ years in America, you know, Donald Trump and the right have used race as a weapon to divide us as people, as Americans. And in one decision, essentially Joe Biden used a choice that is uniting us as people. But what is glaring in the face is that there is still a lot of talk that needs to happen about race in our country, and how much was under the carpet for so long. And we thought, the 60s, they solved all the problems. We had the Civil Rights Act. We're fine. Well, all of this stuff was going on under the surface, and people were shouting from the rooftops. Maybe we weren't listening as Americans, but I can't help but think that this moment is going to be a defining moment for the country, and what will be written in this time after this election. Fingers crossed, we work hard, knock on wood, we'll get it done, that this will be the defining moment of our lifetimes, that we will never go back to that. We will never hire and elect a demagogue, a racist, again. So I'm feeling optimistic, and yet I still know that there's a lot of work to do. I wanted to sort of maybe delve a little bit more into the political right now and talk with you all about the fact that, what often does not get talked about in terms of the electoral equation in this country is the power of the Asian American vote, right? And there was some some reporters have been calling, a lot of folks, and I'm sure you've read a lot of the articles about the power of the fact that not only are there around 1.3 million South Asians in battleground states, but there's about 4 million Asians overall, AAPIs, in battleground states. We don't talk a lot about that. I wanted to just go around and see from your perspective, any thoughts or ideas on how we can engage with those 4 million, because these 4 million are in battleground states that are newfound. I mean, Arizona really wasn't a battleground state 4 years ago. Texas, certainly not. Florida, it's always been a battleground, but Asians were never really considered. I just wanted to maybe go around and whoever wants to go first and to talk a little bit about your thoughts on how we can do a better job in maybe engaging Asian Americans.
Well, I think it's I'm so glad that you're bringing that up, Varun. I think it's really important, and I think we need to be very thoughtful about how we approach this issue, because I don't think there's a blanket single way to do this. Within Asian American communities, and within the geographic differences, the different places where they live, there's such a diversity within those communities. And I think we need to have a multi-pronged approach on how to approach people, how to open lines of communication, how to approach them, what to talk about specifically, because I think different things are important for different groups. I think that one of my concerns has always been the ability of Republicans to sort of co-opt and use old language for their current nefarious purposes. Like they sort of, the way they sort of bend, if, for example, you're coming from a country, if you've emigrated to this country and you've always loved the idea of America and a capitalist society, then they sort of start using these words like socialism and start tying it to prominent Democrats. And so they start building these sort of false relationships with people where, and I think we need to address that. I don't know how articulate I'm being as far as that goes. Maybe someone can help me clarify what I'm trying to say. But I think that we need to really let them know what the Democrats are about, and let them know that that we're interested in their equal opportunity and contribution to this country, that they are welcome and valued here, and help illustrate very specific reasons why the Republicans are not interested in them for those reasons, that they've been working against their better interests, and really being clear about that.
Yeah, I have to agree with Joel there. I think being able to connect a little bit more with the Asian American community that are leaning more conservative, and we know that there are a lot of conservative Asian Americans within our community. We're aware of those ideologies, and I understand that. I understand where they're coming from, but I think conversation and connecting with them and really understanding and being able to talk openly about what they're looking for from their elected officials and what they're not getting right now, what they could be getting from, the Democratic Party. And I keep saying, when it comes to opportunity for, the huge diverse group of Americans, I continuously find that the Republican Party, through its various policies and through this current administration that is now leading our country, we're not part of their future. We are not included. And people may not see that clearly, in which case, I'd like to be able to try and help get that message across in better ways. But it's never going to come from just, a couple of tweets or anything like that. It has to come from conversation. It has to come from communities talking to each other, from, different generations talking to each other. I think the younger generation right now, the ones who are activated, feel activated, and they're, I think they're progressive, they're liberal, they want to see a future for themselves. So I want those conversations to be happening, and there's not an easy way, but I also know our community is incredibly connected. And I hope that those conversations, we can build a way to have those conversations.
Right.
And I'd like to just chime in too, is that, and both Pia and Joel are correct in saying that the conversations need to be held, and we have to be also mindful and kindful in the fact that the conversation is not just one conversation with our elders, with the young people, to get them motivated, to get them activated, to get them excited about the power that they have in their vote. It's about having it's sitting down at the dinner table, at the coffee bar. Oh, sorry. I don't know. We can't sit at the coffee bars right now, but having those phone conversations, having those Instagram, Twitter, Facebook conversations, and being exposed to other opinions, and being able to say, we're keeping this civil, we're keeping this on topic. And it's about letting those, our papis, our pies, our papas, our fathers, and our children, the little ones, to make that intergenerational connection that P was talking about, is to make sure that they absolutely have the power in their voice, in going to the ballot box, in saying that they believe in immigration rights, that they believe in LGBTQ rights, that they believe in Black power, Black Lives Matter, that they believe in women's rights, that they believe on a whole variety of issues, that they can check a box and say, this candidate that I've been learning about, whether it's through the newspaper, through the internet, through social media, through just the dinner conversations at the dinner table. This is the collective kind of conversations that we can have in our families, in our friends groups, in our girls' nights groups, in our churches, in our temples, in our schools, and in all the various organizations that we are all tapped into. So let's just broaden it out, and about the trolls, about people who have other opinions, you just have to learn how to swipe them off your back and say, sorry, I can't further this conversation with you because you're not listening. We're not exchanging ideas, we're not exchanging thoughts, and we're not learning and evolving and growing together.
So true. There was so much truth in what everyone just said right now. And to kind of, there was a theme through what you all were saying, and that theme was, making sure that our stories and our narratives and our issues are breaking through in talking to our friends and our family. I think that's so important. They use this fancy term in politics now called relational organizing. I'm sorry, that's just our people talking to each other on WeChat, Kakao Talk, on WhatsApp. That's what we've been doing since those platforms were invented. They want to call it relational. Hey, that's fine. But we're already having these conversations, these political conversations, and we're talking about how to make a better place. And so I think there was so much truth in what you all said, and I just wanted to put an exclamation point on that. I wanted to ask also, now that we're diving into the election, what makes this election different than in 2016? I mean, I'm seeing sort of engagement where I've never seen it before, but I want to maybe get your stories. Pia, let's start with you, Joel, and then Pamela.
For me, I sort of came of age with voting age with Barack Obama being elected. So I got to enjoy 8 years of Barack Obama and the idea that we were moving in the right direction. And then 2016 came along, and all of a sudden we had the opportunity to elect our first female president, and it felt like the most important election of our lifetime at that moment. Everybody was, united in this, like, yes, we have to get this done. And when it didn't happen, it was just, the deflation I felt. I'd never experienced that. And it absolutely fired me up to become more engaged, at least, and more educated on our policies and politics. Something that, I felt perhaps I got very complacent with, because with Obama in the White House, I just felt like, all right, there were things that weren't perfect, but, we were going in the right direction. The past 2.5 years have shown how important our voices are, how important it is to rise up, to resist, anything that is damaging and dismantling our democracy. And we are seeing the most aggressive form of that. Like, not one part of what's going on is normal at all. And I think this is what, Senator Bernie Sanders said yesterday, where the unthinkable has become normal. That is the problem. We're almost desensitized to this right now. And I could not be more fired up. If I thought 2016 was the most important election of my lifetime, of my voting lifetime, this is the most important election of my lifetime for sure. And I know that there are many Gen Zers who have just come of age now, and their first election is the most important election of their lifetime so far. So this is it. Like, I'm scared for what could happen if things don't go our way in November. And so for me, that is the difference. Every time I think, oh yeah, this is the most important. No, this really is 2020. This is it. We are in one of the most unprecedented situations I've ever been in. I mean, how many of us have been in lockdown during a pandemic, right? So we're in this insane situation. Our country is failing across the board. And internationally, we're a laughingstock. And you know what? We know this because our families extend to the international. We know these perspectives, so we can see this. And if we don't get motivated right now, I fear for us. I don't know if there's going to be a country for us and for, our kids who are coming up. And so that to me is why this one is the big one.
It's the big one. Yeah. Joel?
That's so well said, Pia. My oldest daughter, this is going to be her first election. And I think there really is something to be said about that generation's awareness of how important it is. What it does do is it eliminates another word you used, Pia, which was complacency. They're coming to age and receiving their power as citizens at a time where they don't have the luxury to take it for granted. They understand very clearly what's at stake. I'm very sorry to have helped put that generation in this terrible position. But if there's a silver lining in anything, it's that you realize the simple idea that votes are so important. The individual vote you have, your responsibility as a citizen, it's everything. I mean, I think for me, 2016, just very personally speaking, it was a real wake-up call, because what happened after the election results came in was a very uncomfortable and painful period of soul searching, where I began to realize that my assumptions of what this country was, my assumptions of who Americans were, was wrong. I was wrong about where we were as a country. I was wrong about what we wanted as a people. And that's been a long and challenging and uncomfortable few years for me, as I continually sort of live with that fact. Because at first I just sort of thought, oh, I've been betrayed. Like, we looked under the carpet and we see there's all of this sickness here, all of these thoughts, these hateful thoughts, these divisive thoughts that that I didn't think really existed anymore, except in the smallest numbers. But as time has gone on, I begin to acknowledge my own complicitness in all of this, like that we are all really connected in all of this. I mean, there's a whole bunch of angry, disillusioned people out there who are angry for a reason that we all need to try to understand. You know, we can all come together and condemn certain kinds of behavior, but we also need to understand we have to fix it together. So my whole feeling in 2016 going into that election was what a wonderful, exciting time it was to be an American, coming from 2 terms of our first African-American president, and believing that we were going into our first term with our first woman president, and then sort of having to come to terms that we're not quite there yet, feeling really betrayed and upset about that, and but now sort of understanding that, well, we just have to pull ourselves back up and figure out the ways that we individually can do the things that we can do as citizens, and start over. And let's get this country back on track again. Let's start involving everybody in these conversations. Let's all be uncomfortable together and start working through all of this.
There's a reason for that discomfort. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The things that Pia and Joel were saying are absolutely correct, in that we have to have those uncomfortable conversations. And I think that because this event is being sponsored by the AAPI Progressive Action, there are a lot of progressives that are not happy with the nomination of Biden and Harris, because it's not progressive enough, because they want to wrest the power now, NOW. And that's perfectly fine, because we have to constantly move forward. And the progressive movement is always moving forward faster. The centrists have the idea that we are here in this place right now, and this is enough, because there's so many other people who are shifting their own mindsets. MAGA people, Republicans. How many Republicans were talking last that they're saying, I'm a Republican, I have to vote for Biden Harris? That's the kind of usefulness, that's the kind of power that this ticket has in its hands, is that they're able to really get together and connect with people who are on the other side of the aisle, who have red R's on their ticket, but who are saying, I can't vote for this president again. And they're going to come to the other side. They're not going to go. They're not going to go as far as be willing to be called Democrats, because there's some kind of still that tribalization with liberal, Democrat, conservative, Republican, and we have to move beyond that. It's like you're just voting for the right person at the right time, and Biden, Harris are the right people to lead this country in a forward direction where we can all connect better and do it in a right way. So let's go. Fired up, ready to go was the last campaign. Let's go is this one. So let's do it, and let's do it all together.
Let's do it all together.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. And I'm starting to see that finally, right? Which is like record levels of engagement and that sort of thing. And I want to talk a little bit more about the record levels of engagement. But before I do, I'm going to have the organizers, the technical wizards behind this call today, pop into the chat some more information about AAPI Progressive Action, the 2020 project, amazing organizations, and there's plenty of ways for you all to get involved. And please look out for that. And for the folks who are listening today, I just want to acknowledge you, recognize you for listening and taking it in, using this opportunity to get further enthused. This is an official sort of DNC convention activity as well. So if you're tuning in from that perspective, thank you. And most importantly, we have plenty of time for your questions. I have plenty of questions, but I want to take your questions. So please pop them into the chat as well. And then I'm also going to use this opportunity to say that while I'm not a political expert by any means, it is my job. So if you have any questions that you are maybe wondering about, or your friends are wondering about, Joel, Pia, Tamlin, feel free to ask me at any point in time. So I want to maybe go back to that engagement, because I think that engagement point that Tamlin brought up, the engagement of AAPIs since Donald Trump has gotten elected has been through the roof. We've got a long way to go, people. I'm not resting on any laurels until I'm in a rocking chair. But I think it's important for folks to really realize that since Donald Trump has gotten elected, that in the Virginia election in 2017, which was the first bellwether, Asian American engagement through the roof. It was one of the main reasons that not only did we win, and I say we, I'm a Virginian, I've lived there for 30 years, the engagement was through the roof, and people were expecting a win, but the last poll before that election in Virginia in 2017 had it really within the margin of error for the governor and the attorney general and the lieutenant governor, and the governor won by 9 points. And it was, I think, something that is now we're seeing sort of reflected nationally, which was a bottom-up election, which was there was so much engagement that on the state delegate level, I've never seen anything like that in my lifetime. I haven't even read about that in the textbooks. This was a classic textbook election from the perspective of, if voters get engaged, and they're engaged, they get engaged on the bottom level. The most important thing, the person who you might run into in the grocery store, who is your state delegate or your state senator, your city council person, right? So we've seen that level of engagement go through the roof. 2018 midterms. Of course, we know we won. Asian Americans came out at presidential level numbers in that election. The reason that's astounding is because nobody votes at presidential level numbers other than in a presidential election, right? So the trajectory is great. And then this last data point in the 2019 Virginia election, which only has state delegate, state senator on the ballot, no governor, no lieutenant governor, no attorney general, the Asian American turnout increased by 240%. There is something happening in our community. And frankly, I think a lot of campaigns are starting to understand the power of our vote, but there's a lot more work that they can be doing. And it wasn't like a lot of money was spent on Asians. One of our groups did spend some money there, but it was a modest budget. There is something organic that is happening in our community, and I'm so proud of it, because I think it's going to lead to our own empowerment as a community, right? As Indians, as Filipinos, Chinese, Japanese, South Asians, Vietnamese, Koreans, whatever you call yourself, however you identify, we should all be very proud of this moment and use that as sort of an instigator to work even harder. And a little bit of another data point I want to mention, and if anybody has any questions, feel free to use this opportunity to ask me. But what's really sort of fascinating too is that in addition to the great engagement that we're seeing, I think that there's two areas where we should really concentrate in this election, which are younger voters, the youth vote, and older voters. older voters a lot of times have language proficiency issues. We need to engage them. I think, Joel and Tamlin and Pia, you all kind of mentioned this before in terms of how we, tell our stories and we reach down into, these pockets of our community. But we need to, I think, all do a better job in the political side to figure out how we can give campaign information to voters in ways that they feel most comfortable with. And a lot of times that is in language, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, do you have any questions for me?
I mean, so many, but I also feel like there's a lot of questions coming in as well. So I feel like they're hitting those.
Don't ask me about Hollywood or how to write a script. We'll throw that back to you all.
Yeah, I mean, obviously we know those areas super well, but we're only just getting on screen in a real way. But no, I'm kidding. Yeah, I think I think there's some great questions coming in that I do think cover a lot of the questions I have generally. But just speaking to like the power of Hollywood, just to see two great names in this panel. Representation on screen is important for this very reason, because you guys then become trusted voices for a community that that see themselves reflected in you, and then what your message to them is, they pay attention. And so I think that's what's so powerful. Anyone who, I keep seeing this undermining of like the power of Hollywood. Don't underestimate the power of Hollywood. For good or bad, our current president is from the reality TV world. So I think if we can somehow use the power of Hollywood to enact positive change, I think this is where we're at. We want to be engaged, and Hollywood reflects our nation. It really does. It's reflecting the stories back to us. Perhaps not in the most unbiased way, but we're getting there. And I think, the people who are on screen and who are doing the work to represent us, let's listen. We can listen to them. We can take a minute out to listen to those people and see how we can at least unite together.
Absolutely. We have two questions in the comments in the chat, and I want to use this opportunity to kind of maybe learn a little bit more about your backgrounds on a more personal level. One's a question about small businesses, and this one person who wrote in, Taldat Radha, I believe, talked about Asians and small business in Nevada. They've been very affected, obviously, by I think it's a question actually about multi-generational households and folks who are moving together because this time is a tough time, and economically folks have to move in together. And in our community as Asians, we have the highest incidence of people living in multi-generational households, of course. Did anybody on the panel grow up in a multi-generational household with say parents and grandparents, and what was that like? And did you have political discussions?
I did not.
You did not. Okay.
I did not.
I think we can all say though, but our parents probably did. I know that my parents did. And when we would go visit the other countries, because I'm of Okinawan, Japanese, and Filipino descent, it was still a tradition that was carried on in those countries. And when those families, those extensions of those families came here to America, that's how they lived. This is part of the American dream, but we're realizing that the cost is there because we're seeing the highest incidences of COVID-19 occurring in Asian households and Latino households who still practice the joy and the benefit of intergenerational in-house living. They have larger houses, or they just have rooms set up for the grandparents, the parents, and the children. So there's no judgment there, but we have to be cognizant of the fact that this practice does occur joyfully, and we have to utilize it. It's like, get those kids to teach the parents, to teach the grandparents about political issues that may directly affect them. And it's about the small economies. It's about taxation. It's about small business practices that can affect the hiring, can affect insurance costs, can affect state tax costs. This is all kind of the research that we are we have the luxury, we have the privilege of going to the internet to use, but also it's going to the simple newspapers. It's going to the in-language newspapers and having the journalists, the print journalists, have the discussions as to what is affecting our community right now, and in Vietnamese, in Hindi, in Korean, in Japanese, in Thai, in Cambodian, in Laotian, in all the various beautiful languages that we're all a part of under this huge AAPI umbrella, is that we can utilize the tools that we have and utilize the time that we're still stuck in lockdown to have these conversations. And again, I have to emphatically say this, that it's not going to happen in one conversation. Is to say, did you see the Democratic Convention tonight? Are you going to see it tonight? What are your thoughts about Kasich, from the Republican Party coming out? What are your thoughts about Marco Rubio dissing Eva Longoria about the power of Hollywood, where he is, what in Pia's words, is supporting a reality show president? So these are the kind of common discussions. We don't have to get into policy. We don't, because it gets all wonky. It's like, oh, but these are what we feel is the right direction to go.
Right.
And I think that's the most comfortable way. Is like, what do you stand for? What do you fight for? And I'm sorry to quote Hamilton, but this is the kind of connections that we can daily make in our conversations at the dinner table.
Yeah.
Never be sorry to quote Hamilton, by the way.
I wanted to say something, pick up on something that Pia has mentioned a couple of times that has personal resonance for me, and something that I've been thinking about a lot, and that's the evolution of Asian Americans in the media. And by that, I mean, not just print media or on the news, but really this growth over the last maybe 8 or 9 years with the streaming media explosion of newfound avenues for diversity. There's more Asian Americans on TV than ever before. And I think that, Pia has said, art is something that reflects the community around us. And so as Americans, our number one form of entertainment really that reaches all the masses is television. And for so long, we were not represented. We were not represented in any way, shape, or form, really. And to have that start to happen now, I think it's no coincidence. And I feel this personally too, that the more I start seeing people that look like me being represented in all kinds of different ways, the more I'm becoming aware of, for so long, I was receiving implicit messages of silence as I grew up. There was no one that looked like me, so I wouldn't really say much. There was, I was then trying to be like people that I didn't look like, because those were the people I was seeing in the media. And so I tried to keep quiet about other things as well. Well, I think now as a group, as culturally things start to shift, I know for myself personally, I'm starting to sort of realize that I have been silent in ways that I wasn't consciously aware of. And I'm beginning to understand my power as someone who can speak and someone who has something to say. And then maybe other people are interested in what I have to say as well. I think that's a maturation process of us as Asian Americans, given our place and where we are in history. And I think we can take advantage of that with people around our age, but also with people who are older, that with older Asian Americans, it's not just about language, it's also about a culture and a way of life that has always taught them that we're not interested in what they say. Well, the story now is you are the most, you are the most important people. Like, as citizens, our votes are so important and valued, and we need you to exercise that power. We need you to exercise that voice, because our elders have so much to say. And by and large, they are so incredibly educated and are so very proud to be American. And so who better to vote than these people who have this kind of power? I say we cultivate that. We let people know how important they are, and to let it out. It's needed.
Yeah, absolutely. And Varun, going back to the intergenerational households, like I didn't grow up in one, but I will say, for people who are in that now, and especially if it is because of COVID impact, right? This is where we can see the benefit of those different generations coming together. So, for the Gen Zers and the millennials, maybe in the household, look, you guys have access to the internet and you know how to use it really well. So if there are questions that your elders have that you're not sure how to answer, look to the internet, see if you can find those answers. There are so many resources. The AAPI Progressive Action website has so many resources in itself. So try to find those resources, find people you can speak to, but have those conversations. And when it comes to voting, if you figure out how to register your household and make sure everyone's registered to vote. And right now, because of what's going on with the Postal Service, there are solutions for requesting mail-in ballots, but then not mailing them back, but then dropping them off at specific points. So that's an option that if you can do, that might be the way to go. So see how you can get involved. And I do think this is somewhere where we've mentioned this a few times, and Varun, you mentioned this, of how we get the older generation and the younger generation right now activated. And I think it's actually hand in hand. I think it's all together, because one being super activated, I think, is tied to the other. And right now I know that as an older millennial, I can't really speak to full Gen Zs, but seeing what the Gen Z generation has just done through TikTok and Instagram, I'm so inspired. They are motivated, and they know. And Joel, you mentioned your daughter's voting for the first time. Unfortunately, they are being thrown into the most important election of their lifetime right now. But I have full faith in them. They are so much less complacent than I was, and I wish that, if I had been able to go back to being 18 and figuring out, right, how do I actually get engaged? I didn't do it back then, and I'm doing it now, but these kids are doing it now, and it inspires me. I think our future's looking bright, and it needs to stay looking bright.
Yeah. Pia, you said so many things, and I want to unpack from my slow brain here, just a lot of amazing detail. So number one, you talked about voter registration. I wanted to give a big plug to the 2020 Project. They're going to do a massive voter registration day event in September. Our folks will pop that information into the comments. If you are with an organization, if you want to support that effort, please reach out. And Pia also mentioned that API Progressive Action has a lot of resources on our website. Please pop on there. We are actually doing, Pia, you said the word activated. How appropriate. We're running a campaign called #activated. And it's all about you all submitting your selfie videos, your testimonial videos, which frankly are the most powerful voice that you have to persuade and turn out voters. They want to hear from Joel, they want to hear from Tamlin, but they really want to hear from just regular folks, right? And so I invite you all to submit your own selfie video, and if it's selected, we'll turn it into an ad and we'll push it out on various channels and that sort of thing. So please look at both of those websites for resources. And Joel, I want to go back to something you said. I thought sort of the renaissance that is still, I would say, unfolding in Hollywood, watching, from where I live, just outside of DC, when Crazy Rich Asians hit, it was this, around the same time, that The Farewell came out, and then Parasite wins Best Picture, right? It was sort of like this aha moment that, hey, you know what? White Hollywood, people in America, we're interested in Asian stories too. And I sort of see the same thing happening in Washington now, and sort of like our body politic with Kamala Harris, getting chosen on the ticket. But the difference is, or the analogy, if I do this any justice, is that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden have just been nominated for Best Picture. They didn't win yet. They've just been nominated. Okay, and it's up to you, the voters, to make sure that they get Best Picture. Okay, so you all do that. I am running a little low on questions, so I'm going to go into the comments here. And if anybody wanted to use this opportunity to sing a ditty.
Well, just to find, to fill in space, because I yap a lot, but just piggybacking on Pia, Joel's, and Varun's comments, is that today was pretty significant. if you go on the Twitter, and I do say the Twitter, the Facebook, the Instagram, because I'm old school. Pia is saying, I'm on the old end of millennials. And I go, wait to be really old. But today was a sad day because Hassan Minhaj's Patriot Act got canceled. But today also Daniel Day Kim and Randall Park are going to align themselves in a heist movie together that's produced, under Amazon. This is the kind of collective, yays and ahs that we go together on this journey with in representation as AAPIs. But it is a question that Jeff Yang from Original Spin had put out as well. Is like, why did Ken Jeong's show get canceled, or it's not on air anymore? Fresh Off the Boat is not on the air anymore. Mindy Kaling's show is not in the air anymore. It's like all the shows that we were used to seeing on network television have kind of quietly disappeared. So it's up to you. If you're not as politically interested, you have a voice in clicking on the TV or in tweeting or in just writing a letter and saying, watch these shows. They've got people who look like us. They've got people who are telling stories that are meaningful. They have people who look like us that are seen as just simply Americans. Mm-hmm. So again, it's the power of the vote is the question of our topic in the discussion today. But it's also the power of really advocating and really reaffirming the representation that you do see in TV, in movies, on social media handles, and just say, we're together with you. It's about East Asians aligning themselves with South Asians who are aligning themselves with Southeast Asians who are aligning themselves with Near East Asians. These are all terms that we're all socially constructed under this umbrella, but we've been in this fight for so long together. And just the fact that we've got Kamala representing South Asians specifically is like that automatically aligns ourselves with the Black Lives Movement. It's like, come on, let's get on the same page together because we're all in this together.
I always say that. I've been saying this quite a lot actually in the last few months. The Black Lives Matter movement has been, going for many, many years now, and I've covered it in its various forms because it has its roots in California as well. But I have to say, for me, the advancement of Black Americans is the advancement for all of us. Black Americans are just fighting for equality here. They're fighting to not be discriminated against because of their skin color, something that, the white population of this country does not have to worry about. And for so many of us, and unfortunately, I hate to say that, earlier this year, we saw a wave of anti-Asian racism because of the coronavirus and the president fueling that. And it made me so angry. It made me so upset to see, people were worried. My friends were worried about going outside to, get groceries in a time where they were like, we're just going to do delivery because there's a real fear of being attacked. This is not the America that we came here for, that we represent and that we contribute to. We're never asking to be treated above anyone else. We just want to be treated on equal terms. And that is what the Black Lives Matter movement is about. And I so support, our Black brothers and sisters here in this fight, because their advancement is always going to, we're going to be the lucky beneficiaries of that. And so every fight for that, like I am so behind that. And anything that, for Kamala Harris to represent both is just such an extra bonus. But just the fact that she is out there, publicly being an advocate for the Black Lives Matter movement is, it's hugely inspiring. And yes, I think, there's a lot of interesting sentiments within our own communities that need to be talked about. But I do think this should be uniting Asian Americans, like across the board, South Asian, Southeast Asian, East Asia, or everybody should be united behind the Black Lives Matter movement and the Black American community.
So well said, Pia. And
okay.
so deserving, I would say, any opportunity that we can get as Asian Americans to be better supporters in the cause. We absolutely need to do that, and I can't thank you enough for using this platform to really recognize that. Thank you so much. I want to talk. There's some questions that I wanted to bring up. So there's a commentator named Razi who is asking about activating youth in Texas. Can you make a general announcement for anyone who wants to get involved to reach out on their Facebook page? So Razi, if you can put your organization into the comments section, if you haven't already, please do that. And this is a great opportunity to talk about Texas, because both of the organizations that I work for have decided that we're going all in. We're going all in on Texas. And I want to use this platform, much like Pia just did, to talk about why Asian empowerment in the short run and the medium run and the long run, it all goes through Texas. And indulge me just for a quick minute. So Texas, obviously the second largest state in the country, is going to gain 3 additional congressional seats after the 2020 census. We are down 9 seats in the House of Delegates. The Democrats are. If we win the state house, and we have a lot of work to do, but there's record levels of engagement, then at least we, on the redistricting commission in Texas, we have an opportunity to at least negate some Republican advantages on the redistricting commission, which then could mean that we have perhaps a little bit more fair redistricting occurring post-2020. So beyond the 3 additional congressional seats, which are likely going to be leaning blue, there is the demographics of Texas are such that it is right now 5.6% Asian. After the census, it could easily grow to 6.5%, maybe even 7.5% AAPI. And this is huge. The DNC has been talking, well, maybe not the DNC directly, but people around the DNC and around the process have been talking about moving the calendar of who's going to be an early state. And I'm going to do my hardest, and I hope you all will join me and many, many others to make sure that Texas gets moved up in the process. Why? It is much more representative demographically than Iowa and New Hampshire. I'm sorry, 96% white. It just does not reflect my values. It does not reflect American values. We have to do, as Asians, anything that we can to ensure that we change this process so that our communities are courted if Texas moves up. And that's what exactly will happen. If Texas moves up in the process, every single presidential candidate in the future will have to have a positive Asian American policy. They'll have to learn about singular, the history of Chinese Americans in this country. They'll have to learn about the history of Filipinos in this country and all of our other great ethnicities, the history of Asian refugees in this country. And right now, I'm afraid there's just so much ignorance, and they just don't have that encouragement to learn. And so we are going all in on Texas. And so I want to invite everyone to join Razi, to join the AAPI Victory Fund, the AAPI Progressive Action, all the local organizations in Texas to really help Texas turn blue, because maybe my life won't be affected for the better, but I know my daughters and my son will be, their lives will be better, and our kids' lives will be better. And we have to do everything that we can. So I just wanted to give that a big shout out and a big lift up. Okay, so there's a healthcare question, and I want to maybe ask Joel, Tamerlan, and Pia if you have any experience with this at all. Pia, I detect a slight accent, and I couldn't tell if that was Louisiana or London. But
it's a good hybrid of both, apparently.
I'm just kidding you. I love British accents, and I often try to do one myself when I'm trying to impress people. So there's a healthcare question about Medicare for all, and there was this consternation during the primaries last year. There was a Medicare for all, there was a Medicare Plus, there was, just Medicare expansion. I want to get your thoughts on healthcare in this country, because literally it's the biggest issue right now, COVID and healthcare. And I just want to kind of get your thoughts on what we can be doing as progressives, or just any maybe personal insights that you've had with the healthcare system, whatever you want.
Education. I mean, I think we have to educate people. I have to educate myself and others about what these things are, because it's such a hot button topic, and it's so politicized, and there's so much information and misinformation and emotional hot button topics sort of built around these things that people don't really know what it's about. You have people who are who stand to suffer and lose the most, advocating against their own interests all the time, because they get caught in this sort of political claptrap, So I think education is the first thing, to have simple, clear ways to articulate these policies that are being put forth.
I agree. I think education is so important, and I also think it's tough for me to talk about healthcare at times, because I'm very lucky. I grew up in England, and we have the NHS. So I grew up in a country where healthcare, I never had to worry about getting access to healthcare at any point in my life. My parents don't have to worry about it. No one has to worry. If you lose your job, what are you going to do about your health? And that, I've been here for over a decade now. I've been laid off, and healthcare is a primary concern. And during a pandemic, it is the biggest concern. And it is expensive. By the way, it's so expensive just to be covered. It doesn't make sense to me that people go broke over healthcare, that people, just lose everything just to get access to be healthy. I cannot understand a country that doesn't believe that access to healthcare means a healthier population, which means a healthier workforce, and all of those things connect, and instead, I just see people here, healthcare being, especially in a town like LA, where so many people are freelance, and healthcare is a huge question mark for so many people. I cannot fathom a country like ours not being able to get healthcare under control so that it is accessible and affordable to everybody. And there are other nations that have done it. So I don't understand why there is not a solid blueprint for us to be able to incorporate into our infrastructure. And I do believe that, that seems to be a primary issue that, that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris are going to tackle. And most importantly, they also have really, really good advisors, part of the Democratic, leadership, that will keep them on track and advise them with policy. It comes down to, as Joel said, education and being informed, and really trying to have the right people doing the right jobs. That seems to be the thing that's gone out the window. Having people who know how to do the job. As I mentioned before, that seems to just keep going out the window. So right now, the fact that, we can have the right people back in the White House to make those decisions is, encouraging. I'm worried about it, though. It's a huge, huge factor in how I vote. So, I do think, it's something that I think we need better answers on, better clues about the policy of what's going to be until I'm still not entirely sure. And Varun, if you could tell us anything more about exactly what the Biden-Harris policy is around, healthcare availability, that'd be great. But I do know that they are working to at least help provide healthcare for, in an affordable way to everybody.
I think I could pop in really quickly, because I just have a short answer, but knowing that we're already an hour in, is that we know that the Biden-Harris ticket is pretty is not for Medicare for all, but because of his speech last night, Bernie Sanders is on board to still keep pushing towards single payer, towards making sure that healthcare is provided for everybody across this. This is the greatest nation in the world. It's still supposed to be the greatest nation in the world, and we've wasted the time and the energy in let's just institute NHS. Let's put in the Canadian health services system. That's right to our north. It works. It costs us in taxes, but as long as we know the bulk of our workforce, the bulk of our nation is healthy and is able to work, it's all going to feed into the circular the notion that we're all going to be able to take care of one another. The idea that the progressives and the centrists are here together, and we can push the issue of healthcare. Also, because we're talking about healthcare, I have to give a shout out to all the Filipino and the Filipino American nurses. My God, 1 in 4 are on the front lines taking care of those who are afflicted with COVID-19, besides doing all the other medical care. Also, a shout out to the South Asian, the Southeast Asian doctors who are out there. The whole swath, and knowing that we're in this crisis together, and we're being, we're experiencing anti-Asian racism, but then they go to the hospitals and see that the bulk of most of our frontline healthcare workers are of Asian American descent. So a shout out to them. Texas, tweet us. We all have social media handles. Ask us what we can do to help you, because we've got to flip the flippable states. We got to support the House seats that we need to control and hold on to. And also look out toward the city councils and the smaller races that are in your states, in your towns, in your counties, because we have to all support it. It's all in line. It's all connecting the dots together.
Tamlin, so important what you said, Pia and Joel. I think that, and I'm not a policy expert, certainly, but I do know this about politics, which is that the more majorities we have on the state, local, federal basis, the more comfort and the better mandate a Biden-Harris administration will have in order to stretch the limits of their perhaps original thinking during the campaign. And I remain hopeful for Joe Biden, because I recall that serving as vice president to Barack Obama, I've heard the stories of how he was the one who was pushing Barack Obama to approve gay marriage. It was him. Barack Obama was not really comfortable with it. He didn't want to do it on a fast-track timeline. It was really Joe Biden that was pushing him. So I think Joe Biden can be influenced, but we need to give him an excuse, and Kamala Harris, Vice President Kamala Harris, an excuse to stretch the mandate, right? I mean, Trump had no mandate. He lost a freaking election, popular vote. He lost that election, and he came in as if he had a mandate. George Bush, same thing. Tight election in 2000, came in as a mandate. If we win this year, we need to operate as Democrats like we have the mandate to do everything that's been on the progressive wish list for the last 50 years: climate change, racial justice, Medicare for all, whatever you want to call it, whatever form it comes. Let's just give as many people access to health care as possible, right? So I'm hopeful, but this is also a call. This is not sort of policy wonkiness. It's up to us to turn out the votes. It's up to us to motivate the people so that we have the biggest expanded majority that we can possibly have. Wow, this has been an amazing hour plus, and I just want to thank everyone. I'm going to give everyone maybe just a brief moment to give any closing thoughts. So as you're preparing your closing thoughts, I want to leave you with sort of what I am seeing, and that is, I am so inspired by you all, the panelists. I'm so inspired by what I'm seeing in the country. I'm seeing just activation where I've never seen it before. I'm seeing people donate who have never given a dime. I'm seeing people care about, like, the local dog catcher race when they haven't cared about that race in a long time. It's just so very inspiring. I mean, by a show of hands, how many people know what the term emoluments clause is? Okay, we all, I mean, we've heard it now, right? In the news is my point.
Yeah.
And we would not have frankly known about a lot of sort of basics about our own democracy hadn't it been for this very trying time that we've had these last 3 years. So I'm just very thankful for you all being here today and the inspiration that you've been giving me and the entire API community and America. And it's going to be a brighter day very soon. So I'll leave you all with some closing thoughts. Let's do this. Joel, Pia, and Tamara.
First of all, thank you so much for having me and giving me an opportunity to listen and to engage and to get some new ideas. I'm a father and I am not an expert. I am a proud and concerned American, and I have an appetite to learn and a desire to do things to make a difference, to feel how I can empower myself through educating myself and through simple, clear action that can help. And I implore others to do the same. I hope to do my part with whatever added platform I may have being an actor to help spread that message and to really just take the pressure off, because for so long I felt like my voice may or may not be welcome. I felt like, well, I'm not an expert at this, or I'm not super interested in all the intricacies of policy, so maybe I'll just keep my mouth shut. We're past all that now. It's much simpler because it is so much more important. There's so much more at stake. So I can openly say, and with great vulnerability, I don't know everything that's going on. I never will. And I'm flawed. And I have a lot of concerns and insecurities about my place and my ability to be an effective citizen and father and neighbor and friend. But that's a great place to start, I'm understanding. I'm beginning to realize. And it's a great place because that's the position we all find ourselves in. And we just have to do our best. And we just have to do. We have to do. And we have to look around, do our best, help somebody else, not get self-righteous, but educate, like not get too judgmental, but do, let's get this thing going. Let's move the ball forward for our children, for the next set of elections, for our neighbors and friends. Like, let's do something to make the world hopeful again, to make this country, to put it on the path to fulfilling what it is, land of the free and home of the brave. Let's make everybody free. Let's embolden ourselves, and let's truly make ourselves. I'm not even going to use the word because it's the other side. But let's fulfill our destiny, and it starts with just being normal people, guys.
Yeah, I love that, Joel. I think that's such a great message. And I felt that too about whether my voice was important or not. I still don't entirely know whether it's super important to be on a platform talking about this for me or not. But I actually now am more, I understand more that we have to speak up. We're citizens. We have a vote, we have a voice, and we're just like everybody else out there, we elect the people who we hope know more to enact those policies. But for me, I was born here, I grew up elsewhere, I came back because I was excited by my possibilities here, and I found a career, a life here that welcomed me in, and I'm so excited to contribute to this, and it's difficult to always feel engaged, especially when my direct work doesn't involve necessarily being aware of the broader political landscape. But it also completely affects us. And if anything, the last 3.5 years have taught us we have to be at least informed and educated. And obviously, I've worked in the media for a long time, so I probably have been a bit more tapped in than I've realized. But I want people to feel like the information is accessible to them, that this isn't overwhelming, but that this connects to your very life, and your vote means you are now taking an active step towards shaping your own future. And I don't fear the young people that I'm seeing. Gen Z has got it on lock. I'm motivated by them. I would say for like the millennials, we've been through a lot. I entered the workforce with in one recession. I am now dealing with another recession. We have not been handed anything that has been, easy in any way. We can't afford homes. Most of us are crippled by student debt. Here we are. We're fighting. We're ready to work. We want to be out there and contributing to shaping our futures. We believe in climate change. We believe in an economy that supports all of us. We believe in a society that is inclusive of all. I don't want to keep hearing minority groups. There shouldn't be minority groups. We are all American, regardless of accent or skin color or, background. We represent America right here. So I'm excited to fight for something that is inclusive of all of us.
Thank you, Pia. Beautiful.
Thank you so much, Pia, and thank you, Joel. And thank you, Joel, for inviting me to hook up on this conversation with you, Varun, and AAPI, Progressive Action, and 2020 Project. Again, I have nothing new to say. It is about just knowing that your voice has power, and your voice to say something in how our country together is run is something that you have at the ballot box. It is up to you to figure out how to do it in the correct way, because our country is in a little bit of a chaotic fumble of a jumble. But go to vote.org or go to 2020 Project or go to AAPI Progressive Action to know how to vote for the important dates as to mailing your ballots. But also remember to complete your census. We only have 6 weeks to finish. So make sure that your household does get counted, and so that all those funds that are allocated to your district gets the right monies for the streets, for the street lamps to be fixed, for the hospitals to be funded, and for the schools to be funded as well. Because we're in a critical time right now that we're entering. ING is the operative word here. We're entering our new normal. So in terms of going to the ballot box on November 3rd, or when you're going to mail in your ballots, if you can vote early, great. That's the best, easiest thing to do. Is that's out of your mind. You've made your decision. Because find out how to discuss with others if they're interested in how you're voting and why you're voting. If immigration is important to you, if Black Lives Matter is important to you, LGBTQ rights are important to you, if women's rights are important to you, if the appointments to the Supreme Court are important to you, if the tax structure is important to you, if the new oncoming economy is important to you, find out. And it's pretty easy, I think, for you to figure out how many of those boxes the Biden-Harris ticket clicks. So it's easy to, and there's never the 100% correct decision, but there is the best decision, and the best decision is Biden-Harris.
Amazing. Thank you all so much. And Pia, Joel.
Thank you.
I'm really so inspired by
Thank
you all.
you.
Thank you. More work to do in these last 77 days. We will be having more programming to inspire, to educate. Stay tuned. We'll get back to you soon.